who were not present at the last webinar. We're trying now to start a new one. And I am Federica Ferrauto, I'm your tutor. So if you have any question during the webinar, you can just simply write it down on the chat, and I will pass the questions to the speakers. The speakers of this morning are Ms. Irene Sigismondi and Ms. Angela Viola. They are lawyers and they are field experts for this topic and in the project, of course. So I'm going to leave the floor to Angela and Irene.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. Thank you for being here. Today, we open the first of the 5 online seminars to the Eco for Peace project, in which Abruzzo Region is coordinator. The project has, as we know, the aim of improving the level of protection of the European Union financial interest with combined action at both administrative and training level. The idea and the reason behind the webinars is precisely to ensure a widespread cooperation between countries such as Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina and Italy, which with impact and a positive effect on the entire Adriatic-Ionian region. This project requirement is certainly the result of many years of experience of the EIPA Adriatic CBC program through the capitalization of the best practice, precisely in the action against irregularities and fraud on European funds. The aim is to protect financial interests and safeguard the right to protect the European budget, because serious irregularities in the use of a European fund have created and can cause significant damage to the European budget. It is clear that a first element of sharing for a common year of protection of financial interest must start from sharing a common standard both on the coordination of legal rules to the applied and on the exchange of data and data protection, and on the definition of main concepts such as fraud, irregularities, and corruption. This point of reflection has already been addressed during the project's open conference held in L'Aquila last June, highlighting the need to create unifying concepts with several perspectives: administrative, procedural, and legal. The same is important for the definitions of irregularities, financial fraud, corruption, offences, and objective of and programmatic knowledge of European calls, with a specific indication of the rules and the legal profile to the applied. The first instrument of protection of financial interests can be traced to the need to make cooperation between the states involved in the repression of irregularities operation through the proposed use of training in the field of protection and of financial interest, fraud and irregularities. This is necessary both at administrative level during the design phase and during the implementation of a European proposal in reply to a call, but also during the repression of financial irregularities through the use of the European public prosecutor's office, where the good protected by law is precisely the protection of the European budget. Hence the goal of the ECO for PIF project and the expected result to the reach also through e-learning and online community building, a wide audience using the entire Adriatic-Ionian region that corresponds to the area covered by the strategy of USAIR, with connection also to university institutions, chambers of commerce and cities. This need for coordination between university regions, and states has brought Abruzzo Region to involve some important Italian institutions among the associates of a project, such as the National Anti-Fraud Strategy of the Guardia di Finanza at the Presidence of the Council of Ministers, Department for European Policy, the Italian Court of Auditors and Anti-Corruption National Authority. On the other hand, associated partners are Banja Luka, Bosnia-Herzegovina, the University of Scutari, Albania, with aim the ensuring a high level of specialist training in the field of protection and European Union's financial interests at administrative and at operational technical aspect. This is an introduction to the webinar. Thank you for your attention. Now, my colleague Irene Sigismondi will proceed to the topics of today.
Thank you, dear Angela, and welcome everybody. Today's topic is focused on EU project management involving planning and critical aspects, with a focus on preventing irregularities in reporting. We chose this topic because it is the first and a preliminary step to get to know all the features of the ECO for PIF project, and especially for the university and academic participants, but also to make some systematic knowledge for those who are already involved in EU project management, and therefore public institutions or private entities that are interested in doing the best use of European Union funds. The first part of the webinar concerns the EU project management and its various steps. We try to be concise in order to go directly to the focus of this webinar, which is the reporting phase and irregularities, frauds, and corruption prevention. But it is necessary and useful also to share some basic concepts about the different steps of the project management job, let's say. So we see that there is a sequence of actions. First, we need to find the program and define a concept idea. Afterwards, or at the same time, because we go in parallel also, most of the time when we write a proposal, we need to find partners, organize the working packages and timetable, prepare the milestones, deliverable and output, and consider also the evaluation of the project since its proposal phase, which is important. And so very rapidly, what is European Union management, the Euro planning, whatever you will call it? All activities that are related to production, design, projecting, drafting, presenting a proposal. The name proposal is because it is in a response to a public announcement that is basically called the call. For co-financing, addressed to the European Commission, European Commission from who the CAL is coming, and other managing authorities that manage and allocate European funds. This proposal is made of several parts. We're not going into details about what are the parts for the project proposal, because each program has a different format. So basically, we need ideas, the core answer to the call, and the priorities of the program, because each program has a priority that is set by the Commission every year and every 3 years. The partners, because it is important that the partners belong to the European Union states and also to the pre-accession countries, such as the Bosnia-Herzegovina and Albania, that are associate partners to this very project of ECO4PIF, and the activities, series of activities that have to be defined in a very detailed manner with a timeline that goes generally from a period of 15 months to 36. But each program has a possibility of keeping different duration. It can be shorter or it can be longer, but in any case, this is set by the program. The proposal. Also, the final important element to be stressed out this time is the European added value. The Commission allows funding for a project proposal only if this project proves to be important and effective in some way for the European Union building in terms of capacity building, social building, economic building, interaction are involved in the programs. So it is necessary to choose the program according to what is the goal of the institution or the private entity that participates to the call. And it is always important to look what a single program is presenting and offering. So we took the screenshot of the HERCULE III, which is the program that Olaf funded, the European Anti-Fraud Office, and that the ECO4PIF project is funded by. So in a certain sense, we are at home. This is our program, and has been set in the period, the framework period 14-20, and we are among the projects that were funded for the year 2018. If you go on the website and have a look on the call for proposal, priorities, project and result, you can have a detailed description of what is the aim of this program and see if your institution is interested. Now, we chose this, but as you saw, there are several. There are the COSME, which is stressed on the SMEs, small and medium enterprises. But it's also important, the LIFE program, which goes to analyze and do research and development on the biological research on human life and interaction with the climate change. There are health programs that are related to healthy aging, millions of opportunities, and the Horizon 2020 is more oriented to SMEs, so it's more a technical, economic program. But rights, equality, citizenship is related to the protection of human rights. So there is all the nuances, there are all the nuances of the European Commission competencies that can be implemented, giving support to the European Union in the pursuing of the common interest of a community that is more a union than a community. The OLAF website includes all the information about the program proposal for 2019 and all the programs related to the past fundings. Now, going to the second point, looking for partners, there is a simple and, of course, a jump into the blue, because we're not aware of what is available online, but it is a community like this one that we're going to build for the Eco4PIF project of people interested in several topics. So you can go to the website, the participant portal, and search funding and tenders for partners. So you can include the filtering to see if other institutions in the European Union are looking for partners for a business idea, and you can put yourself a business idea to look for partners in the European Union. And outside, whereas the programs provide the participation for pre-accession countries, or the other countries like North Africa countries that are allowed to participate to some of the programs. So it is more oriented to the kind of institution you're looking for and the kind of activity you have in your mind. It is important. And of course, you can see what are the open tenders and tenders or call. What is the difference between tender and call? The tender is more oriented to providing a service or a product. And therefore, it goes on with the, I know that there are lawyers among the audience, and therefore we can also have a mini introduction to this kind of aspect. There are lawyers, and therefore this is important, the procurement. The tenders go with the procurement procedure. So offer is made through the platform and is selected by the criteria set by the tender call. The calls from the program is slightly different because it is a competitive selection. So the offer, the proposal, is not called the offer, but it's called proposal, is made directly through the platform with a document that is called application form. And it is selected by the evaluators. And we will go back to this later on. What is a concept idea now? So we've gone through the step of looking for a partner, and now we see what is a concept idea and what can be effective in building a concept idea which will be developed into a project proposal, and, if funded, a final project. Now you see the 4C rule. It is a very widespread rule. It is applicable to many activities, and we used in this occasion the reference to this kind of rule, but there are also other concepts that can be used, such as the SMART objective definition, so short, measurable, achievable, related to the final goal and time framed. But we chose to look to the 4C rules: clear, concise, complete, and credible. And look at the last one, credible, also in terms of sustainability, because you can propose to change the world, but you have to have some kind of idea and tools to achieve it. So be credible when you make a proposal. Finding the partners, we already saw this feature. You can enter a topic, a keyword. You can search by geographical criteria or type of organization. And you can be looking for a specialized partner. And this is possible through the platform. Of course, partners have to present themselves on the platform. So not everybody is already on the platform, but I suggest that this can be a nice starting point for this. And this is the link provided. You can go on later. So what are, in synthesis, the criteria to finding partners? A good practice would include, as I said, must, but let's say would, should, territorial analysis. We have to cover the most European regions as possible, or such interesting regions that can achieve the concept idea together with the proponent. Institutional structural analysis. It is interesting to have a choice that includes the public institution, private institution, that does collaboration among partners. And then the other two elements are content analysis, what is required to achieve the goal in the proposal objectives, and the added value. We already spoken about that, because it is important that the partners contribute to the added value of the European Union, as it said. Next step is to define a timetable or a timeline. The objectives are that the activities are divided into working packages according to output or outcomes. So there can be working packages that are mainly organizational and others that are mainly operational. But the important part is during the definition of the proposal that these issues are addressed and correctly followed in the writing of the proposal, in the process of writing of the proposal. Milestones also are important, because it is important in the project to set some times when the participants, the partner and the beneficiaries get together and see what is going on and share the product and the results, interim results or final results. Finally, output deliverables, events, documents, products that are generated by the project activities all have to be set in advance. An example of a simple timeline, we have the phases, and what is below in the gray arrows is the activities and possibly some outputs. Then there is a most delicate part, and we can see that this is the introduction to the focus of this webinar, the preparation of budget. How do we prevent corruption, irregularities and fraud during the preventive actions? If we look at the activities, ideas, partner activities and budget properly, the budget lines are divided generally into staff costs, external expertise, travel and accommodation, events, communication and other activities, so direct costs. And then there are also the indirect costs for the administration, which are attributed in a percentage way, let's say in a ratio, calculated on the costs, the overall direct costs that are foreseen and are acknowledged at the end of the project with this ratio that it is established by the program itself. So it is not changeable by the partner. We see now that monitoring and evaluation are also some activities that have to be performed during the proposal phase. It can include the need assessment at the beginning of the project, as we did with a form that we shared with all the beneficiaries of our project, in order to understand the state of the art of their situation to pursue the objectives and goals of the project. Then during the activities of the project, there has to be some monitoring set up in the proposal with indicators and methodology. This is important and very difficult because it has to include some numbers And many times the activities and projects are more related to qualitative analysis than to quantitative analysis. This is a problem in social science, but applied to EU project management, it can be converted into target values and baselines to be improved year by year or month by month and to be observed. This can be a topic for a totally different seminar, webinar, but we just want to highlight that it is important to take it into account during the proposal phase because it can be differentiating in terms of added value for the project. At the same time, also the evaluation of the project that is written together with the activities can be more effective than an evaluation post facto, so after the project is over. This was just to set some elements, and then we can go on for the other part of the webinar. Now we go on to the focus of this webinar, which is irregularities in reporting. And by irregularities, we include the general element that we mentioned, that we are going to define into details, preventing irregularities, fraud, and corruption offenses. Once the project is approved, we have the reporting phase. Reporting phase is related both to the project and to funds. Physical achievements are related to project activities, and financial achievements are related to funding. So all activities have to be proved by documental evidence and administrative paperwork, conforming to the national and European Union legislation. All financial expenditure have to be compliant to regulation number 1303 of 2013. We put the link to this regulation because this is the base, the first and main reference point to all the activities related to reporting. So what can be considered eligible, admissible as expenditure, and how the procedure to report is set by the Commission and can be performed by participants to a project, generally the lead partner, but also all partners for their own budget. What is irregularity? Now, we took the normative definition. So we went to the first definition of irregularity that goes back to 1995. It belongs to the Euratom regulation. That was the other institution together with the European community in one of the first that were built, and well before the European Union was set. Irregularity shall mean any infringement of a provision by a community law resulting from an act or omission. So legally speaking, irregularity can also mean a lack of documentation by an economic operator. Let's see, this definition is very wide because an economic operator can be a public administration, private entity involved in the project. And what is the focal point of the definition of irregularity? It has or would have the effect to prejudice the general budget of the European community, and now the Union, of course, or budget managed by the European Union, either by reducing or losing revenues, accruing for own resources collected directly on behalf of the communities, or by any unjustified item of expenditure. So a very wide definition. Irregularity can mean anything, acting or omitting, which means that an irregularity can be performed by including an expenses that doesn't have a justification, an evidence, a documental evidence, or excluding some documental evidence to the expenditure that is being claimed. So both by acting and by omitting. And of course, what is the core element related to the budget? We have to impact the budget of the European Union, or budget by the European Union that is managed by institutions that are in charge of using this resource. There is another definition of irregularity, again in the regulation 1303 of 2013. So we pick up the first and the last, let's say, just to have an idea. Irregularity means any breach of union law or national law relating to its application resulting from an act or omission, again, by an economic operator involved in the implementation of the ESI funds, which has or would have the effect of prejudicing the budget of the European Union by charging an unjustified item of expenditure to the budget of the Union. So the prejudice is the action of charging the budget of the Union with an expenditure that would not be justified according to the rules of admissibility of the expenditure. Now we go on to the definition of fraud, which is which was set by the directive in 2017. The directive is also a directive that sets the difference of competencies between the OLAF and the EPO, European Public Prosecutor's Office, that my colleague Angela mentioned at the beginning. The whereas number 4 says that the protection of the Union financial interests call for a common definition of fraud, falling within the scope of this directive, and makes the example of the VAT frauds. We highlighted with the blue definition the idea of common normative concept, which is the first and most important activity in the legal framework to pursue standardization in project reporting and prevention of criminal actions and offenses. So this is very important. So VAT frauds have to be persecuted by the European Union in a uniform way, and this allows also the knowledge of what are the crime and offenses that are most common and most frequent. And we will go back to this in the last part of the webinar. Let's say what can be examples of frauds. We put the link to the document that we refer to by the European Commission, which is, of course, again, the directive and other related document. A convention differentiates between fraud with regards to expenditure and revenue. So you can have a fraud by charging an expenditure that is not allowed, or by taking in some revenues that you are not allowed to take. This convention, you can see the link, is by the European Council. It's a Council Act of 1995 that it is relevant, and we can share with you the page of this convention, but of course it is It is easy for you by clicking on the platform to the link on the presentation to get to this directive. Let me show you just the feature of the multilingual display, which can be very useful for those who want to check in their in other languages the text, also to see what are the differences in translation. It can be, let's say, to check English and French text or English and German and see what is the difference. So the Council Act of 1995 draws the attention to the protection of a European community. Now, of course, we'll talk about a European Union financial interest. Let's go back to the presentation. Examples of fraud with respects to revenue include any intentional act or omission, such as the use of presentation of false, incorrect, or incomplete statements or documents, which has the effect, as effect the legal reduction of European Union budget resources. Non-disclosure of information in violation of a specific obligation with the same effect. Misapplication of a legally obtained benefit, for example, misuse of legally obtained tax payment with the same effect. So the important part is the reduction of European Union budget resources. Definition of corruption. So we went through irregularity to fraud, and through fraud to corruption. For corruption, we used an operational concept, which means some documents that you will find on the links that are related to what is the action that the European Union, and not only European Union, because we put also the United Nations definition, which is addressed also by the European Union, that can be relevant for the activity of prevention of corruption. Corruption phenomena are terrible to civil society because they cut opportunities for the civil societies, for the public administration, and for the building of an economic system. Because the misuse of economic values can bring richness to a small part, negative part of the community, and take resources out of the bigger part of the community and destroy what is being built by the public administration and by SMEs and by civil society and so on. So United Nations focused on this with the General Assembly resolution in 2003. Then we have the Council resolution on a contact point network against corruption. And of course, we have the Hague Programme, which is focused on strengthening freedom, security, and justice in the European Union. And at point 2.7, it states that the European Council welcomes the development of a strategy concept with regard to tackling cross-border organized crime at EU level, and asks the Council and the Commission to develop the concept and make it operational. And this is what happened with the Council decision of 2008. So since then, we have a network against corruption, and we also have institutions that are dealing with corruption. Now, what is the role of OLAF? OLAF was established in 1999. Of course, we will go back to this several times during the lifespan of the project, and you will find on the material on the platform documents that can help you to understand and to perceive the role of the OLAF better, and to better act in the use of EU funding, conforming actions to the OLAF directives. Directive, now I say it is not intended in a technical legal sense, but guidelines. Okay, so Olaf is, it is important to distinguish that the scope of application is European Union law, and Olaf does not do investigation in national standards. So this is an important point, procedural law. We will probably have some material provided on the procedural rules of investigation, because our partner, the AFCOs, we will see later on, do investigation on behalf of the European Union with the Guardia di Finanza for Italy, as far as Italy is concerned. But also other nations are, of course, involved in this transnational and cross-border investigation. So to conclude, we have this institution involved framework, national member states, pre-accession countries, AFCOS, OLAF, IPPO. The IPPO is the European Prosecutor's Public Prosecutor's Office, and the OLAF is the core of this activity by the European Commission. So their coordination is ensured by member states, pre-accession countries, and AFCOS, and each has a different role. Now, I would conclude this presentation, and possibly, if there are questions, I am ready to answer. If there are not questions at this moment, we can go on and see what AFCOS, the Italian AFCOS, has shared with us in order to include also their activity and see what is the institutional connection between AFCOS and OLAF and EPPO, which is presented in our last slide. So I will give 1 minute or even less to see if anyone has a question. Of course, the material, as our online manager said, will be available on the platform for you to go back to.
Thank you, Irene. Shall we wait for Ms. Paola Di Salvatore, the coordinator, to take the floor?
Yes, meanwhile, I was suggesting to see what AFCOS has shared with us.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you.
Their contribution. Okay. So let me take the presentation they sent us and make it available for overview together. Okay. We can use, yes.
Fine.
We're sorry, we're behind the sun, the sunscreen, so it is a difficult view. But, okay.
It's more creative.
Yes, you have to imagine how we look like. Okay, let's share the documents. So to introduce the AFCOS, Italian AFCOS contribution to the prevention of irregularities, fraud, and corruption, we are looking at the organizational chart of the Italian AFCOS that is introduced by the European Union regulation and by the national law number 142 or 92. So it is a connection that we have since 1992, almost 30 years that this activity is going on. What are the institutions involved? Ministries that are related to the various activities that are performed. That can be the economy and finance, agriculture, food and forestry, infrastructure, education and research, economic development, job and foreign affairs. Then what is the law enforcement and the agencies that are involved? The Guardia di Finanza, we already mentioned, but also other corps, the forces that are involved, like Carabinieri, the Revenue Agency, Customs and Monopoly Agency, and the Agency for Territorial Cohesion. This is the agency that is responsible for the funds of the European Union on territorial cooperation. Also, regions are involved, and at a regional level, all managing authorities, certifying authority and audit authorities, which have to interact and signal with the red alert procedure all activities that are suspects in terms of irregularities, frauds, and corruption. Then we have, as a final step on the right, lower right corner, the external control bodies, which include the judicial authorities, the police, the judiciary, and the Court of Auditors. Therefore, all activities that involve the use of public funding will be traced, monitored, and evaluated by the Court of Auditors that have the national level and have a regional articulation, but also a Court of Auditor is present at the level of European Union. So we go on and we see what the organizational performance of the Italian AFCOS include in terms of activities. We're always talking about this component 4. So the system of protection of financial interest of the European Union with an efficient implementation of the national anti-fraud strategy for the protection of financial interest of the European Union. This is what Italian leadership has achieved and what is pursuing with this component and the members of the AFCOS. Now in a future webinar, but also we had them during the opening conference in L'Aquila, they will participate to our activities, and if you have questions directly to the COLAF or AFCOS, so our Italian partners, we will turn them to them and share their view. So this is very important because their knowledge is more operational than what we can provide, because we cover the administrative aspects, we cover the case studies, we can explain and work with you, with your online community, on what are the most relevant cases and what are the policies that can be implemented to pursue the protection of financial interests. But they can help us with the infrastructures by describing what the IMS is, what the Arachne is. Those are tools and systems that are used by the AFCOS to cooperate and to share information. At the beginning, my colleague Angela spoke about data infrastructure. This point about corruption, irregularities, and fraud is always related to data. What is important is to share data and analyze them, data mining. This can bring us to a more intense level of knowledge on what is the practice of activities, what is the trend of criminals, and what are the measures to block, to detect, early detection of crimes. So what are the activities that the Technical Secretariat does with the support of the COLAF and the Ministry of European Affairs? Participates to the meeting of the anti-fraud group of the Council of the European Union, as well as the European Committee and the coordination of anti-fraud fight at the European Commission, monitoring the flow of information of undue European funds and their recovery. So what is not relevant to the European Communion, ineligible, and therefore undue funds and their recovery with the European Anti-Fraud Office and data relating to the cases of irregularities and fraud. IMS is the monitoring system which is used and shared with all participating institutions at the national level that has to provide information on irregularities and suspects, frauds that are being detected by managing authorities, certification authorities, and audit authorities, as we saw in the previous slides. Then also the AFCOS is responsible for organizing training sessions, study visits, bilateral meetings, twinning projects with a component of anti-fraud structures from other member states or candidate states, pre-accession countries, potential candidate countries, and neighboring countries as well. So what we were talking about North African countries or Turkey and other states, Azerbaijan, all other states that are part of the Eastern world, but they are somehow related for some kind of programs with European funding. Then the AFCOS carries partnership activities for standards, experiences, best practices with member states and potential member states. Also, finally, it participates to the European institution through elaboration of specific proposals that can contribute to best arrangements of a valid national anti-fraud strategy. And this is pursuant to Article 325 of the Treaty of the Functioning for the European Union. What is the national anti-fraud strategy and its line of actions? As you can see, this slide is very iconic. We can see that member states, potential member states, and neighboring countries are all involved. And the four main actions are cooperation, training, prevention, and investigation. And they all rotate around the national anti-fraud strategy structure, with the cooperation of our Guardia di Finanza force, which is specialized in training and investigating the crime for this kind of crimes, and Olaf IPO, which are the main actors on behalf of the European Commission, so the Anti-Fraud Office and the European Public Prosecutor Office. We won't go into detail about the European Public Prosecutor Office because this is more procedural issue, and it deals with a new institution that has been set up in 2017 and it is operational since last May. So really in a recent time. We're happy because there is a woman at the head of the IPO office, and this is also nice because the team of ICO for PIF is mainly women, so we're equal opportunity, and this is nice in terms of the evolution of the society, civil society, and also the head of services are being finally, women are finding their positions in the top positions of also of investigation, which is traditionally reserved to men. But we don't go into detail about the procedural relation between OLAF and IPPO, but this will be addressed in some case studies and materials shared on the platform. Now, the last point we want to share with you that was part of the presentation by the Italian AFCOS is the assessment, strengthening, evaluation, and study visits. What is this? AFCOS is also lead in several activities that are related to fraud, corruption, and irregularities prevention, and does regularly an update on what are the actions taken and the state of the art on these actions by the ministry, by the activities internally and externally. So with this expertise, AFCOS can go to the other countries, let's say North Macedonia, that is in a position to become possibly sooner member of the European Union, to develop common guidelines for the prevention of irregularities and fraud in the management of European Union funds. So the idea of standardization that my colleague stressed at the beginning is central and is core to this project and also to the activity of the ECO4PIF project and the partners, the associate partners in this project. So at the academic level, at the operational level, at the law enforcement level, at the administrative level, we can see that this is crucial because core activity will impact on a better use of European funds. So other aspects that are being addressed by the AFCOS have a practical approach in order to make participants aware of how this anti-fraud, anti-corruption, and anti-irregularities prevention works in their daily life. So what we did at the beginning of this webinar by talking about the management and European conception of a proposal will be addressed also with the help of the AFCOS that can do twinning projects, training on the job, and we are with them in this activity. Other two fundamental aspects are the ex-post evaluation on the new anti-fraud strategy implementation, because monitoring and controlling the process group involves managing and tracking the project in order to quickly identify potential problems and apply corrective actions. Why ex-post evaluation and not interim, let's say, ongoing evaluation? Because once the activity are set up and concluded, they cannot be ongoing monitored. They will have to be evaluated ex post. And this is also a very important source of data for the implementation of the new guidelines for future reference. Finally, AFCOS proceeds to study visits directly to the beneficiaries of the EU funds in order to include in their everyday life and training on the job the good practices for protection of financial interest of the European. So we thank the EFCOs that provided us with this presentation, and we will go back to them and include this presentation in the online platform. So for now, this webinar can be considered over as far as the content part. And now we have, sorry for being too long, but we can have some space for questions if are.
Now, I leave the floor to my collaborators who will outline detail the project topic. Please do not hesitate to ask questions at the end of the session. Your opinions are extremely important for our project. I wish you a successful seminar. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we can close this webinar and we will meet again for the second one, which will be held probably in the month of November. But you will know because we will send you the link as for today's webinar. So thank you, everybody. And it's very important for this webinar. It is very important.
The action of the Parliament, European Parliament.
Okay, for the actions to be taken by the European Parliament and for the pre-adhesion policy.
Of the states,
Yes. Okay, of the Balkan states.
Thank you for your attention. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good work. Bye
Goodbye.
bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.